Hey guys, this is Fiverr. Welcome to the video guide for my Frostblades raider. I want to mention before we start the guide that there is also a forum guide for this build. There's gonna be like a link pop up here in this corner somewhere, and I will add links in the description and all of that. I'm also going to add a timeline that will be in the description and in the comments, so you can switch back and forth between different sections of the video. If you want to look at items or passives or whatever, then you can jump back and forth to do that. So this is a build that I made a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away that I've had a lot of fun with over the leagues, and I know a lot of other people have had fun with it as well. There is already an old video guide for this build, but that one is very outdated now, so we're making a new one. So we're going to play Raider and we're going to play Frostblades. We are relying a lot on speed and evasion and dodge and high damage in order to clear all the content in the game, which we are able to do. Awakener 8 and Uber Elder and all of that stuff, we can do it. Before we start going into the build with the items and all of that stuff, I'm going to run a quick map just to give you guys an idea of how the build looks when you're playing it. So we're going to hop into game and just pick a map that we're going to play. So we are in game, and I decided that we'd run something like a Maze of the Minotaur, something like that. I also decided that I'd use a Wasp Nest as my claw, just to show that you can use something else than a 5000 DPS rare claw. So we're just going to show up the clear speed real quick, and I'm going to skip to the Minotaur after a little while, showing the clear speed. One of the strength in the build is the clear speed, the movement speed, and how fast you're mapping and you're delving and stuff like that as well. You'll see that I rarely take damage because we have so high evasion and we have so high dodge, so we're avoiding a lot of stuff.
My mana is gone.
Let's skip to Minotaur real quick and show how it can handle bosses even with a bad claw. So I'm switching to a Ruthless gem instead of Ancestral Call. We're gonna toss up all our burst stuff, Ancestral Call and all of that stuff. Use our flasks. And there we go. And that was with a Wasp Nest as a claw, so I'm not having like super OP claw here. Let's move on to the next. Actually, I'm not gonna have any videos or anything where I'm killing Awakener, Uber Elder and stuff like that. I'll put like links up in that corner over there. So you can check like Uber Elder or Awakener or whatever. For now, let's move on to the next part of the guide. Right, let's head on to the skills we are going to be using. So we're using Frostblades. Together with Frostblades, we're using elemental damage with attacks, hypothermia, multi-strike, rage, and ancestral call or ruthless. So as you noticed in the gameplay there earlier, I swapped from Ancestral Call to Ruthless right before I killed the boss. So Ancestral Call is very, very good when you're clearing maps. It increases your clear speed a lot, but it is not very helpful versus bosses. So having a Ruthless that you swap to instead is a good idea to have on at least tougher bosses. Our aura setup is going to be Hatred, Herald of Ice, and Enlighten. Later on, when you get a Farrell's Fur as your body armor, then you will have aspect of the cat as well. Our cast when damage taken setup will be Immortal Call, Ice Golem, and Blood Rage, and then cast when damage taken, of course. I try to keep these at a low level because they trigger more often if you have them at a low level. Our movement setup is going to be Whirling Blades, Fortify, Cast on Crit, and Frost Bomb. So when you're whirling through enemies, it's a good idea to have Fortify as well. So, and you notice in the gameplay there that I whirl through enemies all the time. That is to keep the Fortify up all the time, or as much as possible. Fortify gives you 20% less damage taken from hit. The Cast on Crit Frost Bomb setup is a good way to debuff bosses, since you whirl through them back and forth anyway, and then Frost Bomb will be left on the ground and it will make the enemy take more cold damage. We also use Flame Dash as a movement skill. This is because Flame Dash can Flame Dash can cross gaps and obstacles that Whirling Blades can. So it's a nice complement to Whirling Blades. Together with your Flame Dash, you want to have Ancestral Protector, Val Ancestral Warship, not the original version, but only the Val version, and these should be linked with a Culling Strike. And this is incredibly useful against bosses. Having the extra cull there when the boss reaches 10% is, and it is useful against some tankier bosses. We are also going to be using Val Haste. Again, not the original version of the haste, but only the Val version. It gives a 4-second boost in attack speed. And we're also going to be using Berserk as one of our burst skills. Berserk is arguably one of the strongest burst skills in the game. Not only do you get damage, attack speed, and move speed, and all of that, but you also get damage reduction when you're using it. You take 20% less or 19% at level 20 less damage from hits when you have Berserk running. Berserk requires you to be using Rage, and you need to have at least 5 Rage stacks before you can activate it. The more Rage stacks you have, the longer it will last. But this is why one of the reasons why we're using Rage in our Frostblade support setup. That is the skills that we are using. Let's head on to our items, I think. Items or passives, we'll see. Next up. The bandit we will be helping is Alira. We want the crit multiplier and resistances that we get from her. The pantheons that we're going to be using is Lunaris and Garukan. When it comes to the pantheons, it's a little bit up to you if you want to use something else, but those are the ones that I prefer. Before we start on the passives, I want to mention that there is a couple of alternatives here at the bottom. There are 5 different passive trees that you can click at, and you'll see the different stages depending on what level you are. We're going to go through this one quick, just the leveling progression, and I'm going to show you 2 more passive skill trees. So there are 3 passive skill trees in total, and they are meant to simulate, you're meant to be using the different ones depending on what gear you have. So the first one here is going to be the one you use early on when you've just early bad gear. The middle one is going to be the one where you have decent gear, and the last one is going to be the end game one where you have expensive gear. Let's start with the leveling here. First thing you do is grab Winter Spirit. Winter Spirit gives us 20% physical converted to cold, and the one before that also gives another 20%. Together with Frostblades, this makes us convert 100% of our physical damage into cold damage. After this, we go down to the left side area here, where we grab the life nodes, we grab these jewel sockets, and we grab Master of the Arena. The jewel sockets are meant to be used for Fight for Survival. You want to get the Fight for Survival as early as possible. Fight for Survival is the Frostblades Threshold Jewel. Get that one as soon as you can because it's very, very good. I usually go Fangs of Frost and then Thick Skin here as well after this. If you want to grab Wind Dancer this early on, it's up to you really. You can wait with it a little bit if you want. At level 55, this is what your passive skill tree should look like. You should grab Avatar of the Slaughter once you've done the second lab, and then you should also grab all the Frenzy nodes. There are 3 Frenzy nodes, and you want to grab all 3 of those as soon as you have done the second lab. You can grab Phase Acrobatics at this point if you want to. If you feel that you are fine on survival, then you don't need to go this way right away. But get this one if you feel that you need the survival. At level 72 or 70-ish, I recommend getting the Claw nodes up here. Soulraker is one of the best nodes that we have, and it takes care of any life leech and mana problem that we may have. So get the Claw nodes, and I highly recommend getting a Cluster Jewel with Cold Conduction on it. I'm going to go more into the Cluster Jewels when we go through the items, but Cold Conduction on a medium Cluster Jewel that gives you increased effect of non-damaging ailments. If you can get one with Cold Conduction and Storm Rider on it, then that is great, but that is also very, very expensive. So you should also go for Assassination and grab Heartseeker. Both of these are great damage, and if you go for this one at this point, you will also pass through Blood Siphon here, which will give you some life. At level 90, you also grab Claws of the Falcon. You grab Depth Perception for the hit rate that is very needed. I have also in the POB here grabbed Cloth and Chain down here just to give me some resistances because I needed that at this point. I'm not sure why I didn't have it earlier, but whatever. If you need resistances, then you can grab Cloth and Chain as well. At level 100, I think your passive trees should look like this. I added this one at level 70. I forgot to mention that. Getting a cluster jewel with life implicit would be a good idea. I really recommend getting one of these as well. You want to get one with Fettle preferably, but anything with life is good really. And the bonus of having these is that you can get life and resistances or attributes on the same passive points. So getting one of these preferably with Fettle and then like resist on the other passives. You also grab, let's see, we also grab Acuity, we grab Command of the Elements and Resourcefulness at this point as well. So this is the first level 100 passive tree. We're gonna look at the other two. This is the one where you have like a bad gear, sort of. The middle ground one, the difference between this one is, well, I've added a bunch of cluster jewels and we're gonna talk about those as well, but the main difference is that we've taken Supreme Ego. You can take this passive point as soon as you have a shield that gives you 15% reduced mana reservation. You will also need an Enlighten level 3 in order for this to work. So an enlightened support and a shield like this one. When you have that, you should get Supreme Ego, and then you add a large cluster jewel with Vengeful Commander and Blanketed Snow on it. It's the one that gives bonuses to cold damage that we want to use, and we want to use one with 8 passives. More than that, and you're spending too many passive points. We also want to add another medium cluster jewel, and it's going to be the one with Precise Commander and Vengeful Commander on it. Again, we'll go more into the jewels in a little while. And so we're adding another life jewel as well. This obviously means that we need to get rid of some points, so we're not getting Master of Command anymore, we're not getting Resourcefulness, and we're not getting Depth Perception. I have also skipped Master of the Arena here. So this is the version of the build where you have all the stuff, the important stuff. When you start getting really good stuff and you start getting expensive gear, then we're adding another cluster jewel. So we're adding a cluster jewel with the same modifiers as we added previously. So another large one with Vengeful Commander and Blanketed Snow, and 2 more with Vengeful Commander and Precise Commander, and then another 2 Fettle or life jewels if you can. This also means that we're getting rid of this entire area here, and we're also not getting these anymore. So this is the final passive tree. We are also not getting, something you might have noticed, we're not getting these traveling nodes to Claws of the Falcon, but instead we are anointing Claws of the Falcon on our amulet. Passive tree done. I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but Avatar of the Shades is the other ascendancy points that we grab. Yep, this done. Item next. We are back in game, and I'm going to start by going through the weapons that we're going to be using. We're going to be looking for a rare claw with as high physical DPS as possible, and you want to make sure that it has crit chance as well. If it has more than 400 physical DPS or so, then that is enough to do everything in the game. Until you can get a decent rare claw, you can use one out of these unique claws. Touch of Anguish is very popular. I'm not a super fan of it, but it's very good. The Scourge and the Wasp Nest are 2 other good options, and you also have Bloodseeker. Bloodseeker falls off pretty early in red maps. The others are like good, you can use them for a long time. You want to swap as early as possible though, but there are unique options that you can use as a claw until you get a really good one. The gloves we want to be using are Shaper's Touch. If you can get the Corruption with Frenzy Charge on them, then that is ideal. Obviously, early in the league, this might be expensive to get the right the right corruption on them, but they drop pretty fast, and right now they are at like 10 chaos or so. The boots you want to be using, I'm gonna go through the gear that you use in the standard version first. The boots you will be using there is Dark Ray Vectors. Dark Ray Vectors gives us bonuses from Frenzy Charges, and if you are playing Raider and you're stacking Frenzy Charges, then they are really, really good. When you reach a point where you start replacing some of the gear for super expensive stuff, then you can get a pair of boots with Tailwind on them instead. The advantage of doing this is that you can get some life and you can get more assistance from them. Tailwind is also like really handy. Like Tailwind is good for the DPS as well and gives extra move speed. The best case scenario is to have both Tailwind and Elusive on the same item. It's going to be hard to get an item like this one in any other league than Harvest, which is the one that I'm playing right now. Another thing to note on the boots is the enchant that I have on it. Damage penetrates 10% of enemy elemental resistances if you haven't killed recently. This one is incredibly strong versus bosses, and I really recommend that you try to get this one on your boots. If you use Dark Ray Vectors or this one, doesn't matter, try to get that enchant. There are 16 possible enchants you can get in the labyrinth, and so they are farmable. If you get a twice enchanted prophecy, you grab the dark shrines, then you can have up to 3 enchants per run, and you can farm for this boot enchant. I really recommend doing it. It's very, very strong. Our helmet that we're going to be using is Starconia's Head. Again, when you reach the point where you can get super, super expensive, then you can replace it for a rare helmet like I'm wearing now. But Starconia's Head is going to last you forever. You will never need to replace this one. It gives you a lot of life and gives you lots of damage and lots of evasion. At the point where I am now, I have replaced it for a rare helmet with some accuracy, a power charge, and elemental damage on it. I think I actually do less damage with this one than I would with a Starconia, but the resistances and the accuracy help me, well, the resistances help me cap my resistance, and the accuracy helps me reach 100% hit chance. On the enchant on the helmet, you can get Frostblades. You can get there are lots of good enchants that you can get. You can get like Blood Rage, Ancestral Protector, you can get Berserk. There are lots of good enchants that you can get for the helmet. I usually go for Frostblades. For the belt, you want to use a rare Stygian Vice with as much resist, life, and damage on it as possible. If you have one that I have now, which is a Redeemer belt, then you can get some extra damage on it. But otherwise, like, start by going for one with life, resistances, and increased elemental damage with attacks. Those 3 are the best modifiers to shoot for early on. The belt is also a great place to have your Aspect of the Cat early on. We'll talk about Aspect of the Cat when we're talking about, well, let's go into our... Yeah, when you get super expensive gear, again, you can switch to a Rislathas Coil. You would want to do this as soon as possible because the Rislathas Coil adds insane amounts of damage. The downside of it is that you need to find resist somewhere. So until you can't get resist in any other way, then you use a rare Stygian Vice. When you can, then you swap to a Rislathas Coil. The body armor is going to be a Pharaoh's Fur. Pharaoh's Fur is the point where we're going to be using, when you have a Pharaoh's Fur, you're going to be using Aspect of the Cat as well. You need to craft Aspect of the Cat on one of your items. I have it on my boots now, but you can craft it on any rare item. If you are curious about how the beast crafting works, then drop by my stream or something. There's probably a bunch of YouTube videos on how that works. It is not that advanced. What Pharaoh's Fur does is it gives us a bunch of stuff when we have Aspect of the Cat active. So we're gaining maximum frenzy and power charges when we have Cat's stealth active. Aspect of the Cat alternates between 2 different modes. One is called Cat's agility and one is called Cat's stealth. And you see that I have, every now and then it's gonna tick up here. The power charges will disappear soon for a little while. And then as soon as this one disappears and goes into Cat Stealth, you see I got new power charges and my frenzy charges were renewed. So since we have 16 seconds duration on our frenzy charges, this means that we always have frenzy charges up. Even when we are out of combat, we will have frenzy charges up because we're getting them all the time. The rings we are going to be using is a Mark of the Elder. This is a really, like, this one is super cheap and it is so good. It is very good. It's not cheap early on though. It's not cheap early on, but after a couple of days and it's a couple of chaos, it's cheap. You see the modifier there at the second one from the bottom here, but in the middle somewhere here, 60 to 80% increased elemental damage, increased attack damage if your other ring is a shaper item. So you want to use this one together with a shaped ring. If you have abrasive catalyst on it, then you can reach all the way up to 96% increased. So the one that I have here isn't even perfect. So a shaped ring as the other ring. Ideally, you want one with curse enemies with level 12 or 8 Assassin's Mark on hit. It doesn't matter that much what level it is, but level 8 or 12 Assassin's Mark on hit. To begin with, you want to go for life and resistances and as much damage as you can. Cold damage to attacks, physical damage to attacks, elemental damage with attacks. The crafted increased melee damage, or increased damage maybe? Increased damage? Whatever. The crafted increased damage is alright as well. There are lots of variations here on the rings, but as much damage and resist as possible to begin with, and then get the curse on hit as soon as you can. For amulet, you want to go for life and resist, just like with the ring and with boots and all of that stuff. And when it comes to damage modifiers, you want to look for crit multi. Critical strike multiplier is usually one of the strongest modifiers for us. It is a very strong modifier. So crit multiplier, life, resistances, etc. We have a lot of good damage modifiers that you can get on amulets. You can get the ones that I have at the bottom there. Physical damage is extra cold. Damage penetrates cold resistance. There is one that gives damage per frenzy charge. These you can only get if you have a redeemer base on it, like I have on this one. Otherwise, you have added physical damage, added cold damage, elemental damage with attacks. There are lots of good modifiers on amulet for damage. I recommend getting an agate amulet, that base, because getting some strength and intelligence on the implicit helps with reaching the attribute requirements. On this one, I have Claws of the Falcon anointed, but that is because I'm playing the expensive version of the build right now, so I have to anoint Claws of the Falcon. Otherwise, I recommend anointing Disemboweling or Holy Dominion or Divine Fervor. If you can't have Claws of the Falcon, or if you're playing an earlier version of it, then use those instead. The flasks we are using, I think I'm done with all of these, right? Yeah. The flasks we are using are a Taste of Hate. This one is expensive early, but a Taste of Hate. A Lion's Roar is very cheap. And a Seer's Promise is even cheaper. A Diamond Flask is free, I guess. Since you get one during the campaign. Get a Diamond Flask and a Seer's Promise and a Lion's Roar to begin with, at least. They are easy to get and they are a lot of damage. The flasks are important. Like, don't forget the flasks. They are important. Get a life flask with bleed immunity and try to get freeze immunity on your Diamond Flask. When you start getting like really good gear, if you find a Bottled Faith, this one is worth a lot. This is 8 exalts right now, I think. Well, it's a couple of exalts. So this is an expensive flask and you don't need to get this one early on. Get this one like very late. This is not a high priority. If you feel that you don't need the damage from all of these flasks, then you can use like a Quicksilver flask or something instead as well, instead of one of the damage flasks. We are done with all of the items that we have equipped. Let's look at the jewels and the cluster jewels. We've already mentioned the Fight for Survival and the Fight for Survival. On this one, you see I have Corrupted Blood cannot be inflicted on you, which means that I don't really need the bleed immunity on this one. I just added that for the video to mention that you need bleed immunity somewhere. But I don't really need it on my flask since I have it on this jewel. You also want to get a Lethal Pride. So this jewel will give us... Like, I have a video on how the Lethal Pride works. Instead of explaining the Lethal Pride here, I'm just gonna put a link up in that corner up there for that video. I sound horribly depressed in that video, so please disregard that. I am not like super bored or anything. But I explain Lethal Pride in that video, so you can look at that one. You want to have a Lethal Pride. You also want to have either a Watcher's Eye or a jewel with crit multi-strike and life. or like crit multi-strike damage in general. But a Watcher's Eye is typically what you want to go for in the last jewel socket. And before you have that, you don't really need to prioritize getting the last socket. The cluster jewels. So we talked about the first one, the Cold Conduction and Storm Rider. You see that I don't have Storm Rider here, I have Blast Freeze instead. That is because Storm Rider is used because we want power charges. But when we have a Pharaoh's Fur, we get power charges. So once you get a Pharaoh's Fur, then you don't want Storm Rider anymore. But the medium cluster jewel we will be looking for is Cold Conduction, and I'm using Blast Freeze in this case. But again, Cold Conduction is the only important one here. The large ones, we talked about them a little bit. Blanketed Snow and Vengeful Commanders are the important ones. You see, I also have Doriani's Lesson here, but I'm not even using it. It is good to have 3 big modifiers though, because when you have 3 of them, you spend less points traveling. So if you only have 2 of them, you need to spend 1 more point when you're traveling. It's because the points align differently depending on how many you have. But you want Vengeful Commander, which gives our auras increased effect, or our hatred aura increased effect. You want to have Blanketed Snow because it gives us elemental penetration. And the medium ones that we're adding 3 of, the increased effect of non-curse auras from our skills, with Precise Commander and Vengeful Commander on these. So Precise Commander gives us and nearby allies increased crit multiplier and crit chance. And like I mentioned earlier, critical strike multiplier is probably the strongest modifier for the build. We also have Vengeful Commander on this one, again for the hatred, it's buffing the hatred effect. So we have 3 of these and 2 of the big one. Another Blanketed Snow and Vengeful Commander, another Precise Commander and Vengeful Commander, and another Precise Commander and Vengeful Commander. I also have a bunch of Fettle jewels, like you can see here. So you see on mine I have cold resistance on this one, and I have Fettle, which gives me a lot of life. If I were to unequip, let's say unequip one of these, I might not be able to unequip these actually, because if I do, I might not meet my intelligence cap. Let's unequip this one. This is only 3 points that I'm getting rid of now. But I lost like almost 400 life there, 350-ish life or something. Or, yeah, something like that. So even if it's only a few points, then it's a lot of life that you can get from it. And to top that off, you can get like resistances and other cool stuff from them. That is the jewels taken care of, I think. I hope I haven't missed anything. I probably have missed something. Yeah, I think I might have missed something, but at least that's items are taken care of. I think that is all I have for now. If you need help with anything, if you just want to hang out or whatever, feel free to stop by my Twitch stream. There is going to be a link in the description. You'll see my name here. There. You can drop by the Discord server, which is here. There. Or drop by the forums. And I will try to help out as much as I can. If I am not online, then you can get help from people on the Discord server as well, because there's a lot of people in there who have played the build or are playing the build or whatever. I think that's it. I hope you have fun if you play the build, and goodbye.